Good morning, everybody. It's Steve Brown from Mirae Asset Securities, Mirae Asset Live. Joining us this morning, we have Mr. Brook Taylor, CEO of the Asset Management Division of VinaCapital and also General Director. Brook, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Stephen. It's great to be here.
Thank you. Now, Brook, with your company, 18 years old this year, you've also been in Vietnam for 24 years this year, so you're one of the most experienced expats working in the asset management business in Vietnam. What I'd like us to talk about today is the journey and milestones of VinaCapital since the inception of launching VOF with around about 10 million USD in seed funding back in 2003 and a successful listing on the London Stock Exchange back then with this vehicle as well. Yeah. Up to today, where you've now got well over 3.3 billion US equivalent in assets under management across diversified asset classes as well, which we'll explore.
Yes.
Okay, so firstly, the journey of the VinaCapital company when you joined might be the area, because 2003 was the establishment, set up, listing, but it was really around the time when you joined, 2007, the assets had approached about $1 billion. You came on board, you'd had a lot of experience working for the big four accountancy firms, so it's understandable to see why they brought you in to join the company. Just talk us through the period that you came in and where you've seen it go through to, and the specializations and asset classes that you like to focus on.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I joined VinaCapital in 2007. Previously I started my career with Arthur Andersen, so I'm an accountant, more specifically an auditor by training. I came with Arthur Andersen to Vietnam in 1997. So I saw, look, I always had an interest in investment, and an opportunity came up to join VinaCapital, not as specifically to do investment, but to take care of the things behind the scenes. So I was appointed as the Chief Operating Officer of VinaCapital at that time. It was a very, very important time for VinaCapital because they had raised considerable amount of money that you're referring to in 3 close-end listed funds that had been listed on the London Stock Exchange. It also raised money in a venture capital fund as well, of about $30 million. So we had a lot of money coming in, and I joined at the same time as Andy Ho, the Chief Investment Officer, to let's say institutionalize the business a bit. We both had institutional backgrounds. Andy was from Prudential, I was from an accounting firm, and we'd come in to help Don Lam manage the business. You know, yeah, we raised $1.5 billion in that time. We invested it, as I said, in 3 funds: the Vietnam Opportunity Fund, the Vina Land Fund, and VNI, the Vietnam Infrastructure Fund. Of course, we all know that the global financial crisis fell upon us in about 2008, and of course, it all went a bit pear-shaped. We spent probably the next 5-6 years tidying things up, recovering investments for our investors, and doing the best that we could in terms of you know, growing the funds, growing the assets, and making good investments.
So after the establishment and then also the recovery after the market crash that was a bit of a worldwide phenomenon, you basically then set about restructuring the businesses that you were looking at, the asset management company itself. You had the Vina Wealth business come in, launching VFF a couple of years later, around 2013. But when you were talking about the evolution of the business around about that time, what were the specializations and the things that set you apart?
Yeah, because we had all of these funds with different strategies, we built up a lot of expertise across multiple asset classes. And I think that's what differentiates VinaCapital from all the other asset managers in Vietnam. We invest in all asset classes here, all available asset classes. So that's public and private equities, fixed income, technology and venture capital, infrastructure and real estate. Now, some people might say, well, where's your specialization? Our specialization is Vietnam. We invest in Vietnam and all of the opportunities that are available in Vietnam. And when you look at it, you see that we have critical mass across all of those asset classes. So we're able to have large teams, specialized teams, to actually find and execute investments successfully across all of the asset classes. We find it's a model that works very, very well, and it's ideal for an emerging market, right? Because you don't have scale, say, for in the public equities in the stock market. We have access to all of the deals that are available. We can find a home for every investment opportunity that comes across our desk. And we can design solutions that investors are looking for. So they don't have to come with us with preconceptions of how they want to invest in the country. They just need to tell us what they want to invest in, and we'll work with them to find solutions.
One of those solutions, if I can expand on that, is 2016 you had the Warburg Pincus partnership come with you to form Logis.
That's right.
You've basically got a $750 million US equivalent vehicle there that's investing in a lot of interesting hospitality real estate projects. One of those is the Ho Tram Strip.
That's right.
The resort and Greg Norman attached golf course. The talent that I've noticed, not only can you bring in partners to invest, but you can also hire well. One of the investment directors you've got there now is ex-GIC AVP, Duc Nguyen, and he's now working out of the Logis Ho Chi Minh City office. So the fact that you can bring in the foreign AMs and LPs and investors is also countered with bringing in good talent who know the sector that you have to then focus on to build out the asset.
Well, that's essential, right? I mean, well, look, first and foremost, we look for talent in Vietnam first. If we can find it, we will find the good people here and put them into the projects, or either directly into the projects or to work with us. But we do find from time to time that skills just aren't available. So we have to bring in experts to help us, or experienced people from overseas. And that's how we move forward. I mean, this is an interesting observation in terms of VinaCapital as a company. We're helping to grow and develop in an industry. And when you do that in an emerging country, you often have to pull in expertise from somewhere else to set up the systems right, bring in that experience, as opposed to try and nut it out by yourself. It's an important transfer of expertise.
Okay, so part of your story has been successful alliances with the likes of the Warburg Pincus's, Draper, Fisher, Jurvetson. Can you just give us a little bit of, anecdotal stories on a couple of these? You've also had a partnership with the company that I work for, Mirae, which is looking at the tech sector and venture capital, potential unicorns and successes of the future in the TMT sphere. So the process of establishing those partnerships, and will that become then an expanding component of your business, where you're just going to look at bringing in more and more, or is there a bit of a finite limit on what you can do?
Yeah. So maybe if we step back a little bit and say, why does it exist? Why do we have these joint ventures and these partnerships? So what had happened after we had set up the company, had those closed-end listed funds that I was referring to before, we liquidated the real estate fund and the infrastructure fund. And the technology fund also had reached its maturity as well, so we had to liquidate that. So, but we realized that we had capabilities within the company, and people, essentially, that were good. They're good, and we didn't want to lose those capabilities. So what happened is we started to invest our own money in those asset classes. And we did that for a few years, and what happened was that people would approach us. They would say, well, if you're investing it, I want to invest alongside you, right? So that was the first step. When people see that you're successfully investing your money, they want to invest alongside you. And that's why the likes of, as you said, Mirae and Neva have joint ventured with us for VinaCapital Ventures, our second technology fund. Warburg Pincus came and joined us to invest in our hospitality platform because we already had a range of hospitality assets. And we find it hugely beneficial. We find that when we go into these partnerships, each partner brings value, right? With Warburg Pincus, as one of the world's leading private equity investors, we've learned a lot as well, right? We're a young company. We can benefit from working with these organizations to help us build our own business. So it's really great when these partnerships come together and both partners have something to contribute. And there's an alignment, right? It's mutually beneficial. From all of these partnerships, we bring the Vietnam expertise. We bring them the deal sourcing and the opportunities. And they bring capital and their international experience.
So for the investee companies, you're quite comfortable with supporting the companies that you're investing in. Do you take board positions in the unlisted investee companies frequently, or?
Yes, we do. So for unlisted companies, we will take board positions. In all of the joint ventures, we have several. Usually the board is comprised on a proportional basis, based upon the ownership. So we don't have control, but we have a large minority stake, and therefore we also have a lot of board seats that go with that. We are more cautious about taking board positions in listed companies. The way that the regulations are written here, it makes it difficult for us to execute trades, buy and sell when we want to, and we need liquidity, right? We need it because of our products. But we do also try to work with the listed companies as well, and meet with management regularly.
So as an active participatory shareholder rather than having an appointed board seat, so you can still express the values that you want to pursue with the investment and the executives, but without the encumbrance of having an actual board seat, which might inhibit what you were saying about tradability of your positions, because you've got around about $1 billion in listed equities,
That's right.
US equivalent now, as part of your total assets under management. So the private equity investments, if you can give us a little bit of colour and insight into some of those, and where the sectors are that you find of interest, and also respecting the fact that some of the investments may not always go through to an IPO or a listing. You've probably got other exit strategies that you've realised in the past and can see in the coming time.
Right. Well, the vast bulk of our private equity investments are sitting in the Vietnam Opportunity Fund, which really specialises in investing in companies that are outside the market. Right now, a lot of the companies or portfolio that it holds is actually listed companies. But if you look at how we invested in them, they were originally private equity investments or negotiated positions that we took. So when we look at what we want to invest in, we're really focused on the growth story, right? So consumer growth, consumption growth in particular. We're less interested in export-orientated companies because, look, realistically, Vietnamese companies can really, on exports, really only compete at the moment based on price, and that's pretty low margin. That drives margins. So we look at domestic consumption, and we look at the sectors that are going to grow quickly, and then we pick the companies or target the companies, the private companies that are growing quickly in those sectors. If we look at what sort of targeted rates of return, then we're looking for companies that are going to grow at 3 to 4 times faster than the GDP growth rate. Now that means, I guess, over the life of VOF, 14 years or so, that's a growth rate, an IRR, of between 15 and 25% at different times, depending on how the economy is growing. When we invest, we obviously have one eye on the exit. How are we going to get out of the position? And look, you shouldn't be buying anything if you don't at least think about who you're going to sell it to. That's the nature of our business, isn't it? And look, it could be, we could list it. We could list the companies on the stock market. It's always an attractive option. But more often than not, we get a knock at the door. There's a trade buyer, right? There's someone that's interested in particularly an international investor that wants access to the market. And it's sort of the second wave of investment when you think about it from foreign investors. The first wave was come here, set up a factory and start selling to the retail market. The other way to enter this market, of course, is to buy an existing successful business. And we often find ourselves in a position where we're holding some of those companies, and people and trade buyers want to come in and buy them.
Excellent. And how about we talk about now about the creation of clean energy platform that came through around about 2019 for VinaCapital. You've got a few initiatives there that you've been focusing on. You've got some JVs also, GS Energy of Korea being one of the partners that you've engaged with now, which is a huge project.
Yes.
You can discuss that one. And then also, just very recently, last year in 2020, you're getting into the rooftop solar as well.
Right.
So there's a few things for you.
Yeah,
and
well, it's an exciting space. There's no doubt about that. We started this initiative back in 2019 when we realized that for some time Vietnam had been a net importer of energy and electricity, and that there was a serious risk that the lack of electricity within the country could stymie or slow growth, right? So that meant the government was going to have to move forward with a lot of the power projects that had sort of been delayed for a long time. And there was an opportunity around clean energies, solar and wind as well. So our first initiative was what you referred to, the rooftop solar business. We set up a company called SkyX, and we started to build rooftop solar installations on the top of factory roofs in Vietnam. It's a great project, it's win-win, and of course it's great for the environment as well. It's been very successful. SkyX is now probably among the top 5 rooftop solar businesses in Vietnam, and we're in the process of bringing in a partner for that particular project, which should be announced in a couple of months. Very exciting initiative. Okay. As you mentioned, though, we've also just entered into a partnership with GS Energy out of Korea. That joint venture will construct the Long power station, which is huge. 3 gigawatt hours, about $3 billion investment, and it will generate about 9% of Vietnam's electricity needs. So it's huge, and it strategically, in terms of the location, it's just outside Ho Chi Minh City, so it's the perfect generator and supplier for about half of the city, essentially. That project has been licensed, and it will, we hope, be commissioned in 2025, 2026. So it's full steam ahead. And our final initiative in the space is we're building a clean energy platform. It's a fund that will be, we have commitments already of 200 million, and we're going to close it out at about 300 million. That will invest in solar and wind generation projects existing, and it will also construct them. And again, we have a partner there. I can't mention right now who our partners are, but in a month or two, the news will be out, and they're very prestigious groups.
With wind, do you prefer onshore or offshore?
Onshore. I think, you know, I'm not an expert in this, but when I talk to our guys about it, the maintenance and weather risks associated with offshore are much, much greater. Onshore, also, of course, transmission is also much easier in terms of onshore.
Okay. And Samresh Kumar, he's working with VinaCapital. He's been with your company for many years. Yeah. I think I've known him since about 2013. Right. He's involved with the SkyX
That's right.
solar part of your company. So I'm sure you're on the right track in this part of your business. Now, the Vina Wealth Management story, the domestic asset management story, everyone's wanting to get into that space. Pension planning, Dominic Scriven recently was discussing with us how one of the milestones that he thinks will be remembered for his business is the launch of their pension platform this year. Can you discuss with us the VinaCapital vision for your domestic AM business?
Yeah. Yeah, well, certainly we're committed to being a top 3 player in that space, right? So we see the potential of the market, like many people do. I mean, at the moment, if we look, there really isn't much pension industry, and great for Dragon to have kicked this off and got things started. We will have a pension fund business soon.
As well.
That's right. We're just waiting for the necessary approvals to be granted. But for the time being, our focus is on mutual funds and the distribution of mutual funds to the retail market here in Vietnam. At the moment, that industry, well, if you look at the AUM, it's about $2 billion, of which ours is about 150 million. So it's a reasonable share. It's dominated by Techcombank, which has 1 billion in one fund. So it's skewed a little bit. But look, the potential for mutual funds in this country is huge. It's no different to the growth that we've seen in other countries that have, over time, launched mutual funds and grown retail savings. Right? So if we look at Korea, it's $1 trillion industry, right? So, and Korea has a population that's half the size of Vietnam. Of course, we're some distance away from that, but we've got to expect incredible growth rates over the coming 10 to 20 years.
Still quite a blue ocean to swim in. With that sector, a lot of the overseas experience has shown if there's an attached life insurance policy to funds that are coming in, they're usually more favourably taken up by the consumer. VinaCapital, Andy Ho used to work at Prudential, so he's well known in the area. Do you look at any potential for getting into that space as well, to when you're talking mutual funds with an attached life policy?
Well, we're in that space already, right? It's here. So it really is being driven by the insurance companies themselves. So the insurance companies are realizing, as has happened in other markets, as the market matures, people move away from their universal life policies, which are backed by government bonds, and they want to diversify, and they're guaranteed by the companies, right? And they move into these investment-linked products or unit-linked products. So that's really driven by the insurance companies. So we have 3 insurance mandates already. We're running for between 2 and 4 funds for each one of those insurance companies. And so when they go out and sell their insurance policies, they are talking to potential customers or clients, policyholders, about this product itself, which is great for us, really good, because we're introducing to the market investment-backed products, right? Whether it's in equities or whether it's bonds. So it's a great introduction, and we're very supportive of it, and we're working very, very closely with our insurance partners on that space.
With that, I've read through your materials, and a lot of the take-up's been with women, Vietnamese ladies, 30 to 40 years of age. So they're very interested in this style of product. So if you can convert the male population, you've pretty well got another blue ocean to work with.
Well, I think it may not need to, actually. At the end of the day, I think in many households, women are holding the purse strings. So, but you're exactly right. We've done probably the most comprehensive survey of wealth management in the country. We completed it in February. The findings are very, very interesting. A typical investor in a mutual fund product is between 30 and 40 years old. They have income about $2,000 a month, and they're usually women. Right? So we'll be focusing on that demographic. Good.
Now we might move on to some of your equity investments. You've got around about $1 billion US there in cash equities, plus $100 million or so in the bond arena. A few of the specific companies and sectors your team's interested in looking at this year, moving forward?
Yeah, as I said, everything revolves for us around domestic consumption growth. At the moment, I guess the darling of the stock market and the company that we have a large stake in is Khoán Group. It's had a great run over the last year, but in fact we invested in that company when it was a private company. It was when it was the 17th largest steel company in Vietnam. Now it's the largest. But that's very indicative of the companies that we're looking for and the companies that we're able to source and invest in. We can get in early. We worked with management a lot in Khoán before it was listed. We've helped them we've guided their strategy, and we've helped them even recently. We were on the board for about 5 years, but we've stepped off as the company's become larger and you know they've changed their board. But a great company. We think we have $1 billion, but we're pretty overweight in Khoán at the moment. I think we're probably close to a $200 million stake at the moment, and that forces us to trim our positions a little bit. We the nature of the business, you can't be too overweight, notwithstanding how good an investment it is, and we see considerable further upside for Khoán Group, but we do have to take money off the table.
But you are lucky, though, the structure and nature of your funds. You're not encumbered with many of your funds with a 10% threshold investment limit, such as a UCITS fund would encumber you with. So you'd be forced to divest, even no matter how good it is, and get back under the 10%. So you can sometimes be a bit Berkshire Hathaway and go in very heavily into something that you're interested in, without having to keep an eye out for EU oversight. So you do have that benefit. Yeah,
I mean that's a good parallel. Let's say we're a lot like Berkshire Hathaway. VOF is a lot like Berkshire Hathaway. We find good companies, we invest in them to help them grow, and we hold them to maturity, let's say.
Well, HPG,
but we're not under pressure we're not under pressure to sell at any particular time. If the growth continues to be there, we'll continue to hold it. So that's good. It's just reflective of the VOF strategy, and people should. It's great if people sort of understand that we're not churning the portfolio. We're just trying to find great companies.
P&J, that's another one of yours,
Yes.
another long-term one of yours, 33-year-old business this year. In fact, I think maybe this month or so, it was their birthday. They are, for me, a company that has huge potential because they've got 63 provinces in Vietnam, yet store presence is mostly saturated in the south, mostly in the Ho Chi Minh City urban conurbation. They've got most of their revenues still stemming from here after 33 years, and I think the internal market of Vietnam, the internal market increasing discretionary spend consumption story with increased GDP per capita, it's an ideal business to take advantage of all of those. In time, rolling out further north, Hanoi is a different market for them to expand in, but your thoughts on that business? It's been one of your core
another
holdings.
long-term hold for us. I mean, we like the company, we like the industry it's in. We have a great management team as well, a management team that knows where the company is going. They have the vision and huge potential, as you say, in terms of the expanding geographically. What I like, I attended one of their presentations a year or so ago, is the transformation that they've gone through from, let's say, a gold or gem trading type business, which is traditional, so many jewelry shops in Vietnam, to a branded product company, right? And that's been very successful. Obviously, it's widened margins, but they've positioned the P&J brand as a premier brand in the market at different tiers because they have different store positioning. So while the economy continues to grow and people have more money in their pockets, they'll be buying more expensive engagement rings. And
we heard this year they're expanding their factory number 2 as well to make more product.
Yeah,
so
well, it's a great sign, isn't it?
They're quite vertically integrated, this one, aren't they?
Yeah.
So a good story. ACB Bank. Tell us about that one.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I mean, again, this is a really good example of, us executing on our strategies and focus, So we didn't actually hold ACB until very recently, and we purchased a very large block that came onto the market in February or March of this year. We had looked at ACB for many years, and we wanted to invest in it. It's a good bank. It's had its ups and downs, but look, it was one of the first companies on the stock market. And it shows it's a survivor, right? And the way that they're acting upon their strategy, executing their strategy at the moment, they're going to move, they're going to have a bigger and bigger presence and grow their business faster than a lot of other banks here in the market. But what I was saying is that, this block came up, and literally we had 3 days to decide, right? And now, because we're in the country, we're looking at everything that's going on here, and we've already identified companies, or banks in this particular case, that we want to invest in. When the opportunity arises to actually invest, we can move fast. I mean, there really wasn't a lot of other buyers for that stake, because foreign investors, it was a foreign investor block, really either weren't monitoring the market closely enough to be able to take it on with such short notice. And partially COVID driven, right? People couldn't come into the country to basically go and visit these companies and kick the tires.
Sure. Yeah. And a lot of the analysts, a lot of the PMs are all working from home, overseas as well. Yeah. So not only can they not do a corporate access tour or DD visit, a lot of them can't even go into their offices yet fully on their normal basis in London or Hong Kong or elsewhere. Yeah. That's the Tier 1 bank that you're interested in. Tier 2 bank with a vision for Tier 1 in time, OCB?
Yeah. We've held OCB for probably 4 years now, 4 or 5 years, can't remember. But we were really impressed by the bank when we took a stake in it. We knew, again, it's another example, really good management team, know where they're going. They had, I think they were one of the first banks to use McKinsey here. And what impressed me when I read the investment proposal was that they were carrying out what was expected of them, right? So they had agreed this business plan with McKinsey, and we could see them carrying it out. I mean, it was done very, very well. The other particular interesting side of this was their focus on technology. I mean, we have a lot of technology investment in venture capital. We understand how technology works between offline and online, what's achievable and what's not achievable, right? And this is an example where our expertise in multiple asset classes can be brought to the table. And it was part of our consideration for investing in OCB that we asked our venture capital team, what do you think of what they're doing? Is it going to be executed well? And you see that from a technology point of view, they're one of the leaders.
Sure. International Finance and Forbes last year both awarded them accreditation and status as being one of the most visionary in Vietnam in that area.
I think that's right.
Of fintech. And the KDH and a little bit of real estate, you've, like some of your peers, seen year to date, that stock's had a pretty good run.
It has.
Had a little bit of profit, taking some money off the table there. So even though you have some long-term positions, you're also happy to still take a little bit of a profit. Keep a good weighting though, 3.67%, I think, or thereabouts. That is one of the urbanisation story darlings of this region. Yeah. Although you're not too heavily focused in the, say, the Vin Homes or VRE or the like of that scale. You prefer the specialists like KDH. They're closer to your office, I suppose. You just mentioned before with ACB, you could just pick up the phone or just go for a walk and have a coffee with the senior executives?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, KDH is another one of those investments that has really started as a private investment, and has been listed, and we've followed the company through its evolution, let's say. I mean, as you probably gathered already, I mean, we like that, right? We feel comfortable with it. We like working with the management team. This is another well-run company. But that's not to say, KDH isn't our only investment in real estate, and in VOF specifically has moved quite a lot of allocation into real estate, and we have included Vin Homes in some of our portfolios recently as well. Okay. So, it's become quite diversified actually, our holdings in real estate, but we're investing it, we look at it totally as an exposure to a sector. KDH is a key component in it.
Okay, and exposure to a sector, if we move on to a recent listing that is coming up in June, the DXS company.
Yes.
You successfully picked up around about, when was it, 29 million shares in the real estate company through the IPO. Talk us through that idea.
This is just, well, first and foremost, it's in the real estate sector, and we needed some more exposure to it. It actually is a company we wouldn't usually invest in, right? It's a services company, as opposed to the other real estate companies, which are landowners and have great landowners and have land banks and so on. But this company has done exceptionally well, and it's sustainable. Their business model is a little bit different to your typical real estate agency business, in that they buy and sell inventory, right? So it's a little bit different to, as I said, other real estate developers, but we see the potential, and we're sure that over the coming years we're going to see some pretty good performance.
We spoke recently to some of the executives of the company, and we think that the differentiation of their service offering, like you just mentioned, it does set it apart from the norm. One of the fellows, Alex, who's one of the executives of the business, he was on with us, and he's actually been educated, PhD educated in Western Sydney University, joined the board last year after his time at university, and then also working for Cushman and Wakefield, and then he's worked for all of the majors in Australia at senior management level. So he's seen what's gone on in the real estate services sector in Australia, how they've vended in more than just selling real estate, but also offering up, the mortgage ability as well, where you can pick and choose from all of the banks and get revenue from that as well into the business. So I think they're going to be targeting about, 65 million USD equivalent this year, which is almost as much as their related party DXG is looking at.
It's a significant minority, a significant subsidiary now, isn't it?
Yeah, they're very confident. But I like the story, and to me it's kind of a bit like a Ray White of Australia mixed with a potential for Mortgage Choice or Aussie Home Loans of Australia. You're from Wellington, New Zealand, so you know what I'm talking about.
Well, every country's got its leading real estate groups, right?
Yes.
And this is the one for Vietnam. It's doing very, very well.
I think so.
We can, that's again, this is what, this is one of the important factors in terms of VinaCapital, how we invest in Vietnam. And it's probably no different to other asset managers. But we have insights from overseas. We see what has been successful in other countries. We know there are one or two large dominant players in the local agency real estate businesses. And we know it's going to happen here. We've got to find them, right? We need to find number one, two, or three in this market. But we with the experience, international experience that we all have, coupled with the local experience and networks and relationships to be able to access deals, it's a very powerful combination.
And to start to wrap things up with, your colleagues at the executive level there, you've got Don Lam, everyone knows Don Lam in Vietnam, founder and CEO, started the business, single US $10 million fund back in 2003, still there today, now 3.3 billion alongside yourself and colleagues. The CIO, Andy Ho, as well, very experienced. Ms. Thuy Nguyen as well, who's the head of investment for public equities and fixed income. You've also had relatively new blood come in, Ismail Pillay,
That's right.
as head of research, and he's got a lot of experience. He's worked with Macquarie in the past, and then also the US head of business development that you've got now, Eric, as well, Eric Levinson. Mike Kokolari is a very highly regarded chief economist. He's been with both brokerages and now back in on the buy side, so he knows both sides of how everything goes. What is the headcount actually at the moment across the group?
It's about 165 in our office in Ho Chi Minh City and Hanoi in Singapore. Right, so that's. But of course, there's a lot more people within the portfolio companies and our joint ventures and so on as well. So it's a big team. Right? It really is a big team. On the asset management side, that is, it's basically split 50-50 between the asset management side and what we call the VCG partners, which is our alternative capital in energy infrastructure.
That's the part that Mirae is in.
That's right.
Yes. And Naver as well.
That's right.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Brook. It's been a pleasure to speak with you and get an update on how VinaCapital's going. And we'd probably like to hear much more about SkyX and also the JV with GS Energy in particular for our Korean clients. Very familiar with that company and very highly interested in basically what you're looking at in doing with the vision of achieving up to about 9-10% of Vietnam's energy requirements within a few short years. You know, so we'll definitely have you back later on.
That's right. You'll be welcome. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Steve Brown from Mirae Asset Securities with Brook Taylor of VinaCapital. Thank you.